Microsoft has both highs and lows when it comes to Game Pass and revenue. The Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Physical Edition, is it a scam and it only has 70 megabytes of data on? And The Witcher 1 is getting a full-on remake in Unreal Engine 5. Welcome to the Stay Tuned on Gaming. Stay tuned for the week of gaming news. I'm your host, Damien Richards. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get down to it. Well, this week, there's probably no one bigger than Microsoft and Xbox that had news this week. It was a big week for them as they came out with various price ranges and news about how their hardware and sales for Game Pass have basically been good and bad. So let's start off with the good. Game Pass has already been profitable for Microsoft and Xbox, with around 15% of it being of Xbox content and service revenue. Phil Spencer has said he's not expecting it to go any further than this, and they're not expecting at any point in time that there will be a 50 to 70% revenue coming from their subscription services. They've seen immense growth on PC, but there's been a slow growth on consoles. This is mainly due to the fact that they've basically targeted everyone they can on their Xbox consoles. They've also said that more than 20 million games have been streamed using their Xbox Cloud service, which is double the amount they had previously stated earlier this year, and that PC Game Pass subscriptions increased by 159%. Alongside this, they also had hardware revenue increase by 13%, alongside a 3% dip in Xbox content revenue services, and they've also said that many Xbox S owners were basically all new to their ecosystem. Now, while these are very good, let's get to some of the low points. As I said, they have very slow growth on consoles. They've also missed a very big target they had for Game Pass growth this year. They had a target of 73%, but only grew to achieve 28% of the growth. And that at some point there will be a price increase for various services. This could be games or the console or even Game Pass or Xbox Gold as well. So yeah, there's been highs and lows. Alright, so what does this all mean? Well, Xbox is in a very good and bad spot. This year wasn't really big for them. They didn't have any major releases, which again didn't drive hardware sales or even subscription services. This shows the stagnation that they have on their hardware side, as they've already said that they've gotten everyone they can when it comes to consoles and Game Pass on Xbox. This is also part to show that this usually happens with subscription services, and why Microsoft is so willing to buy all of these studios, because they need to get content onto their subscription service. You need to spend money in order to get people to buy money, right? The idea is basically that the problem that Microsoft has had, and this is still a problem they've had, maybe till next year will change, is that they don't have any services or games that really push the service for you to buy them. You really need to either go to a third party and spend a lot of money, or like they're doing, buy businesses, buy developers, Blizzard, Activision, Bethesda. This is something that they need to do, and this is something that's really shown this year. Because they had nothing to release, no one really bought an Xbox. And of course the Xbox Series S would be the one where they gain the new ecosystem and the new people, because it's the cheapest system, it's the smallest system, it's the system to get them into it, right? Once they buy that system, which is mostly digital, they then see the Game Pass and they use the Game Pass to get a lot of games because it's the easiest and cheapest way. I have no issue with Game Pass, I never have, but it just shows what Microsoft needs to do if they really want to make it successful. They need to keep releasing titles for it. And I do think this year it came from the purchases of Bethesda and the Activision Blizzard deal and getting those games to be put onto their service, because they didn't have anything this year, like I said. Now next year is going to be a big year for Microsoft. They are going to have a lot of games. Starfield was pushed back, Redfall was pushed back. These games that have been in development need to be coming out next year. They've already lost this year because Sony's releasing God of War Ragnarok in a couple of weeks. That's going to be a big, big title. Nintendo already had Bayonetta come out later this week. So you have so many people really hoping to see anything that Microsoft can produce. And this year they haven't. Halo Infinite, it wasn't really the seller they thought it was going to be, even when they sent back to get it to look better. It wasn't what they wanted. Now the idea is that the Activision and Blizzard deal is going to be really important for them. The top 4 games played on Xbox in the USA, well, 3 of them are all Activision Blizzard titles. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Overwatch, and Fortnite. So this deal is going to be very important for them to get done. Now, of course, there's a lot of pushback from Sony and the UK, but it's not a wormhole I'm going to go down right now. So we'll see what happens when it comes to all of those parties involved. And if the deal does go through, it's going to shift a very big focus from PlayStation and Nintendo to Xbox. I do think they really, really need to get this done if they really want to show some real grit. But of course, next year is the year they're going to do this. As for the prices, I understand what they have to do. They cannot keep prices the same. People are saying the Xbox Game Pass will be the one that goes up, and it does make a lot of sense. They usually have a lot of deals for newcomers to get into the subscription service by giving them like 3 months for a really, really good deal, sometimes even a 6-month deal. There's a lot of that goes around with Game Pass because they want to entice people to buy into it, right? But the issue is once they're in on it, do they really resubscribe once 3 months are done or 6 months is done? I really did wish that Game Pass had a yearly subscription. I think it's much better. It's cheaper than having a 3-month or even a 6-month subscription. Having a year is usually always one of the best options to make. People don't like their stuff going off every month, especially could be 1 month is a really bad month. It could be the 3 months coming up could be really bad. I love a year because it's always just a safe time and a safe bet. Going off every month, it's not a fun thing for me. But another question has come up. They can't really do Xbox Gold Live. They tried to increase it, remember that? And it caused a whole issue. As for consoles, they've said they kept the price down, but remember, there was a whole row that happened when Sony announced that they'll be doing price increases for the PS5, and then Microsoft said that they would never increase it. And again, when they say that, when a company says that, it's kind of just a fib, because sometimes it will happen. It will eventually happen. Sometime or another, it will be increased. And I probably think, the Xbox X, Series X will be the one that increases, and the Series S will go down. But there will be an increase. People have also said that games could be the thing that they increase, make it more expensive so that people would jump into the Game Pass service. But if they increase it, they may have to make sure that they have to wait for everyone else to increase the prices of their titles, such as Sony or Nintendo. But next year is going to be a big year, and that's not going to be tough because Nintendo is also going to be bringing out, hopefully, Breath of the Wild 2, which is going to, again, shape and shift the whole game market once again. But let's just see what Nintendo does, and let's see what Microsoft does this time, because it was a year that they had to tough it out. They had to tough this year out because they had nothing. And next year, if they do not go full steam, it's going to be a really, really tough year for them. Because I think next year, Sony is going to really push next year. VR2 is going to come out. We're going to see more use of the PlayStation Plus tiers. They're going to make more use of that because they're going to understand the market a lot more by that point. And the games that they have coming out are just as strong as anything that Microsoft can pull out. The thing is, Microsoft does have Game Pass, but can it match the exclusives that Sony and Nintendo are going to bring out? Because like I said, Nintendo's going to have Breath of the Wild 2, and everyone is waiting with Breath for that. And then, of course, we have Spider-Man, Wolverine is in some point over there. Final Fantasy 16 is going to pop up at some point. Silent Hill has already been poised to come out on PlayStation first. So there's a lot of going to be finagling and moving around. And there's a lot of stuff that is happening on Sony Studios that, something that Microsoft just hasn't been able to compete with. This is why they bought all those companies. But what do you guys think? What do you think will be the price increase? Will it be the games? Will it be Game Pass? Will it be the consoles? And, where do you see the future of Game Pass? Do you like all of these subscription services? I don't. I hate them. I really don't like the subscription services. I'm not a fan of them. But do you enjoy having this variety of subscription services? And which one are you subscribed to? Are you subscribed to Game Pass and PlayStation? Or do you do the Nintendo Switch Online and Game Pass? Or do you have something completely different like Humble Bundle, stuff like that? I do think Humble Bundle is the best one out of all, though. Is the Call of Duty Physical Edition a scam? Well, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 released earlier this week. And, people who bought the physical copy of the game quickly found out that the disc basically contained nothing. It contained 70 megabytes of the game, and you had to download the rest of the over 100 gigabytes of the game, which included both the campaign and the multiplayer. Now, this didn't go off well with people, as many people questioned why they would even release a physical version of the game if nothing was going to be on the disk. Now, obviously, I think that 70 megabytes is basically like a key, an activation code that gets sent to the server to tell them, hey, he has access to the server, and then it downloads the whole game for you. And yeah, this kind of is showing us a dark future that we're going to probably be going into probably very soon in the gaming industry. Now, first of all, Call of Duty is not the first game that has you downloading a title even though you bought the physical copy. There's quite a few number of those titles out there. The Switch is probably the most egregious one, as sometimes when you buy the game and you have the cartridge, you put it in, it'll tell you you can't play the game at all. You have to download a bunch of the game before you can even play it. So Call of Duty is not the first. But again, it's quite sad to know that this is where we're going in the future. Now again, the game is over 100 gigabytes, and it sucks that Activision Blizzard couldn't even just put the campaign on for you. Like, you can't even play the campaign when you put the disc in. And this, like, PS5 games, you can install and play it on the disc and play it completely offline. Some Xbox titles aren't like that because of Smart Play and things like that, so you have to be online to play it. But you can play a lot of PS5 titles and PS4 titles completely offline. So it sucks that you have to be completely online and then download over 100 gigs to even gain access to this. Like I said, it's not the first game, but it does suck when you think you have a whole game in your hand and then to find out you got to do this. Now, this shows where the industry is moving, both in the digital realm and how developers and companies are going to be using digital sales, right? Because they don't want to release physical copies anymore because they take less of the cut. You have to spend a lot of money to release the game on a disc. You have to talk to distributors and sellers, and companies just don't want to deal with that anymore. And doing it digital allows them to get a bigger cut, like 70-30, right? And it's even an easier rollout than it would be a physical copy. So yeah, that just shows what they're really wanting to do, right? Why go out and make a disc, get a disc, burn the disc, put the game on the disc, then talk to distributors and sellers, and then take only a small profit from it, when instead you can do it. Now again, I don't like this. I love owning my tough stuff, right? And when you go digital, there's two things you give up. You give up control and you give up ownership. And that's basically what happened, right? All these subscription services, you've given up control of your titles, of your games, right? You don't own your titles. They can shut the service down at any point. You don't control what leaves and what comes. So you have no control. The same thing can happen with you buying a digital game. At any point, they can just rip the game from the store and you can't have access to it anymore. You probably can't even re-download it. Look what happened with PT. No one can get it anymore unless you've downloaded it and kept it downloaded on there. You can't even re-download it. So it's that very definition of you lose control. And then you lose ownership. You don't own your thing. You don't own your game. You don't own your product. You lose this. And if you buy something physical, you own it. You can resell it. You can borrow it to a friend. You could give it to a friend. You can give it as a gift. You could burn it for all you care. You own it. I don't like not owning my stuff. And this is the age we're going to walk into when it comes to digital products. I think this is the last generation for physical media. We've already seen companies like Sony and Microsoft release both a physical and a digital console. And I think by the next generation, we're going to have ourselves a complete new digital console war. It's going to happen. It's just how it's going to be. Don't get me wrong. And I could even see them have like an add-on for discs to be played. Kind of like they did back in the day where it was cartridges and then discs were coming out. And so they were like, oh, we'll make an add-on so you can then play discs as well as cartridges. So it's not something I like, right? So what do you guys think about the future of our industry? Do you like going all digital? I mean, there are benefits to being digital, but there are just as many benefits as having physical, having something you own. So do you like to go digital? Or are you more of a physical type of guy? Do you love buying CDs and discs, having a big collection? Or do you not really care? What's your choice what's your idea on this stuff? Well, it seems like we aren't done with the Witcher franchise once again. CD Projekt Red has come out this week and announced a full-on remake for the original Witcher title that will be done in Unreal Engine 5. Now, this game is in very early stages of development, but it will be done by the Polish studio Fool's Theory, with a lot of high-ranking and veteran staff that worked on the original Witcher or the Witcher series in general. This news came out of practically nowhere, And this comes off the back of CD Projekt Red back, I think it was in the beginning of the year, where they announced a bunch of new Witcher titles, as well as a new trilogy and a new Cyberpunk game and a completely new IP. So CD Projekt Red is going to be in a lot of like development busyness, and this of course is not being made by them. But this is very interesting. I think The Witcher is the perfect one to remake, as it's a very, very old title. I think it came out like in 2007. So that's pretty old. And I don't even think it's aged that well. I don't think it's aged really well. I think it's probably the worst one. I think Witcher 2 aged a bit better than Witcher 1. But I think it makes sense to remake this. And I know people had a whole lot of controversy about The Last of Us Part 1 being remade. But this makes a lot of sense. I know they released like an enhanced version way back where it was to make it a lot smoother on newer machines. But it still isn't like a one which I would want to go back to. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. This shows that CD Projekt Red still really care for The Witcher. Of course, like I said, they announced like 4 Witcher projects, like a whole new trilogy, a new one, 2 new titles in the series. They also announced the new Cyberpunk title. And then, of course, they had that new IP which they're coming around. But it seems like, once again, I'm afraid that CD Projekt Red is doing too much all at once. And that's not a good sign, especially for a studio that is coming off the terrible release of Cyberpunk. And while Cyberpunk has gotten into a lot of people's good graces, I still don't really... I never thought the game was terrible when it came out, first of all. And I think a lot of people gave it a lot of bad rap. But when you would promise stuff and you have a level of quality that you've done over the years and you don't stick to it, it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And that's exactly what Cyberpunk did to a lot of people. He was hoping that CD Projekt Red does well with this title and that the future titles don't wind up as Cyberpunk did. So, are you guys interested in this Witcher remake title? Did you guys play the original? And what do you guys think about the future of these franchises, both Cyberpunk and The Witcher? What's got you probably the most excited? Alright, so now that we got a lot of the big news out of the way, let's go through some of the smaller news. Sony's London studio have said that they're working on a new online co-op combat game set in fantasy London. The studio is mostly known for making real gimmicky games such as SingStar, Buzz, but they've mostly worked on a lot of VR titles. So quite interested in that. The PS5 has crossed 2 million sales in Japan, but it's the slowest console to do so. Mostly I think this is due to the shortages in the chips, and of course Sony moving away from making a lot of Japanese games and more into Western titles. And of course they can't really beat the Switch, which is just a monster over there. The Sonic the Hedgehog series has sold over 1.5 billion copies in its lifetime. This has been mostly due to its free-to-play titles such as mobile titles, but it's also shown us that they've been able to sell a lot of other things when it comes to these things. Even though that the games have been pretty bad, the franchise is still quite big. Sega also revealed a couple of other interesting tidbits for their franchises, such as the Total War series has amassed over 40 million units in sales. The Football Manager and their Chain Chronicle franchises have sold 25 million copies each. And here's a big number, Persona 5 series has sold over 7.2 million copies. As of March 2022, 70% of those copies have been international. So it shows how much more popular Persona has become in the West than it has in Japan. So Sega is definitely looking at that. When it comes to other big news, co-founders of Rocksteady, Stephen Hill and Jamie Walker, are leaving the studio at the end of 2022. This is quite a big departure. They want to move on to do other things. And of course, their big game, Suicide Squad, still hasn't come out yet. I don't think it has a release date. I know it's set sometime 2023, but with Gotham Knights not really doing that well, you're going to hope the Suicide Squad game does really well. Especially, it's not a good sign if these two leave right before the major release of their only title in 7 years. Doesn't bode well. And on the other hand, Callisto Protocol, the game made by the Dead Space developers, has been cancelled in Japan. This is due to the game not passing the Sarah rating board and the developers not wanting to meet their demands. This basically led to the game being cancelled. Now, it's worth noting that a lot of games get censored in Japan. It's nothing new. Even games made in Japan are censored by Japan. Just look at the Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 7 has a scene where your arm gets cut off. Doesn't happen in the Japanese game, so it looks pretty weird. Yeah, Zero is pretty much known for being very hard, fast, very tough when it comes to the ratings, and if you don't meet their standards, then your game doesn't get released. And even when the game has 2 releases, usually a censored release and like a gory release, it doesn't really matter. The gore release still has some censorship in it. So that's just how it is. If you find a Japanese title for cheap, don't ever pick it up. Okay, and let's talk about the video game releases of October 24th to October 30th. We saw a lot of good games come out this week. Star Ocean: The Divine Force has come out on October 27th for PC, PS4, and 5, as well as the Xbox. Everything except Switch. Oddworld Soulstorm Enhanced Edition makes its way on October 27th on the Switch. The Resident Evil Reverse, as well as the new DLC, released on October 28th. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 finally released, and it's available on all consoles on October 28th except the Switch. And of course, the biggest release of this year for the Switch, Bayonetta 3 comes out on October 28th for the Switch. Looks really good, and again, it makes good sales. And that has been the Gaming on the Week. I've been your host, Damon Richards. What do you guys think about today's news? Do you really buy physical games anymore? Do you stick to digital titles when it comes to Call of Duty? Please like, comment, and subscribe.